first I came in here in NACMS, I just very surprised. It is very well organized, which means well organized stuff makes good research. So this is my paradise here. So that's what I say. It's like I'm just very happy to be here and then study here, and research here, work here. Many things makes me happy. So when I go back to Korea, I'm strongly wanna do the librarian work.
Welcome to Sharing Our Marianist Stories, a podcast produced by the North American Center for Marianist Studies in Dayton, Ohio. I'm Mike Bennett, Media Administrator for NACMS. After spending the last 2 years at the Novitiate in Dayton, Ohio, Joseph Choi will profess first vows with the Society of Mary on June 22, 2024. In this episode, Joseph describes his journey from high school in South Korea through his time in the Novitiate in the United States, including his lengthy experience of the aspirancy, which included time in both South Korea and San Antonio, Texas. Please join us in praying for Joseph as he anticipates professing first vows. Without further ado, let's turn the floor over to Joseph.
I'm born and raised from South Korea. So my Korean name is Hyun-sik Choi, and my baptismal name is Joseph. Currently, I'm second year novice till now. So my letter for the final vows is accepted. Okay. So I will make first vows in June 22nd on Saturday.
And that will be in Korea?
In Korea, in the Seoul community, which is one of the brothers community.
So tell me a little bit about what led you to the Marianists. Where did you first encounter the Marianists?
In South Korea, I was born in Mokpo City. In Mokpo City, there's Marianist Mission High School. And then I went to that high school. I met the religious teacher who is one of Marianist brothers. His name is Brother John Ko. And then he was my religious teacher, and also he was my spiritual director. So he led me to the Marianist spiritual things, and then he gave some opportunities to have experiences about the Marianist life or communal life in the brothers community. In the high school vacation, most of the time I spent with the Marianist brothers in their community. So that's the beginning of my Marianist vocations. In 2011, I had chance to go on a pilgrimage about Father Chaminade. So I went to France, Spain, and Rome with one of the Korean brother, Father Simon Choi, and other young lay peoples. So it was 11 days pilgrimage. So first I went to Paris in France, and then I visited Bordeaux, which is the first foundation of Father Chaminade. And I saw that which the Father Chaminade celebrate Mass, the altar, and then his communities. And then I visited his cemetery. And then I went to Zaragoza, Spain, and then I visited the Our Lady of Pilar Basilica, and then it was good to see the big church, and it just inspired me a lot. And then I went to Madrid, and then 2011 there was World Youth Day. During the World Youth Day in Madrid, there's there's a Chaminade school. So I stayed a couple of days there, and then I went to Rome. And then one of the most memorable place is Scala Santa. I guess in English is Holy Stairs, that you can pray kneeling each stair. I pray rosary in each stair, and then when I finish it, the prayer rosary. During prayers, I never feel hurt, pain, but once I finished my prayer, I realized that my knee is bleeding and I feel hurt. So that I just feel that the power of prayer. After that, I can say I have curiosity to being in the religious life.
You said it was it your knee that was bleeding?
Yes.
Okay. That sounded pretty profound. And at least as you were talking about the pilgrimage, I was going to ask you if there were some more spiritually profound moments that may have informed your pursuit of vowed religious life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
So during the high school vacations,
Mm-hmm.
as I say, I used to go to brothers community, and then there's small chapel, and then of course we have morning prayer, evening prayer, but sometimes I go to small chapel in the community like afternoon, and then no one's around, no one's there in the chapel, so it was empty, just only me and Jesus there. So I just spent like 1 hour or 2 hours just watching on the cross. Actually, at that time, it was like I was just 17, 18. I don't know what does it mean, the cross to me, really. So I just figured, who am I and why I'm here? Like just awakening myself, like knowing myself. That moment is very important to learning about myself or learning about how Jesus come to me. After evening prayer, I just asked to my brothers about my curiosity from this silent moment in the chapel. And then they fulfilled my curiosities. I realized, this is the communal life in the Marianist. That experience was very inspired to keep maintaining of my discernment and my vocation journey. So since then, I asked to Brother John Ko, who was my spiritual director, I think I feel the God's calling to enter the Marianist. So what I can do? I'm still a sophomore in high school. So he says, waiting for your graduations. And then I say, okay. And then after graduations, he say, you still have discerning to enter the Marianist? I say, yes. And then right after high school, I enter the Marianist as an aspirant. Different from others, I had long aspirancy. In Korea, I had 7 years aspirancy.
Wow.
So my aspirant director, Korean aspirant director says, you have 2 options. One is you go to college, university for 4 years, and then 2-year mandatory service, because in Korea, the man should do the military service in 2 years. So college 4 years, and then military service 2 years, and then you go to United States and take a novitiate program in Dayton. That's the first option. And second option, have 1 year aspirancy in Korea and right away go to United States and take a novitiate program. That's the second option. But myself and then people around me says, most of people around me says, you should choose the first options. Go to college. So I said, I think it's a good idea. So I went college 4 years first. I majored chemistry and education. So after the college graduation, I've got education license, which I can teach chemistry in high school. And then during college, I did military service 2 years. I was in DMZ. I was not living in the brothers community because it's military service. So 2 years military service, 4 year college, and then 1 year more living in the brothers community. And then, as you know, 2020, there's pandemic. So I should wait for 1 extra year more. And then the end of the 2020, December 28th, finally, I came United States.
When you talked about the 2 options, seek out 4 years of undergraduate study and then 2 years of service, that was the option you chose.
Yes.
And what was behind that decision for you? Was it a value of undergraduate study, or were there other factors that caused that decision?
First of all, as I said, I entered the Marianist right after the high school.
Yeah.
So which means I still influenced by many people like teachers and then families or friends around me. But most of my friends went to college, and then teachers suggest me to go to college first, and like which is my adult who around me, and then my families also recommend me to go to college first. Even the brothers too. They says, we need educators, even teachers too. So we recommend to you to go to college. But it's your option, it's your choice. But it's all the people who are around me says you go recommend to go to college, and so that influenced me. And then if I not go to college first, I will have some challenge after that. Came United States in December 28, 2020 in San Antonio, Texas. So I began to study English. First was at MACC, Mexican American Catholic College, with Brother Memo. In San Antonio, I studied English and then take some aspirant program, and it was in a year and a half. So I live in Casa Maria community in St. Mary University in Texas in a year and a half. And then I moved Dayton in August 2022. And I began the Novitiate program. And then I began my first year novice in here with Dennis Baptista and Tim Eden and Tom Wendorf, Tom Radmond, Tim Phillips at that time. They are perpetual brothers in the Novitiate community. And then I'm with, as a first year novice. And then I was with Memo and Chicago. We are the first year novices. And then second year novice, there was Brother Juan, who's now is temporary professed. During first year novice, I took many different classes like prayer life, or community life, or the vows, poverty, chastity, obedience, stability, or in NACMS, I took a Marianist history class, and or in the Novitiate community, I took a church history, kind of general history of the church. And then 2023 May, I finished my first year novice, and then I've got my evaluations to continue to my novitiate. I lived in the Chambers community, which is nearby UD, University of Dayton. My work in second year novice was at UD. I work as kind of internship of campus minister. So regularly I went to the freshman year's dormitory, and then with Father Kip, I served the mass for the freshman years. And on Thursday, the main chapel of UD, Thursday night, the UD have the compline for the students. So I served that compline too. And the other things I did, then I was observing the UD students' retreat programs, like New Beginnings retreat program for the freshman years, and then learn about and how I doing as a campus minister. And then second things, I was doing research or studying here in NACMS for understanding of the librarian work. And then second things like my personal research. First one I did the understanding of religious word between United States and Korean. It's about understanding of cultural differences, especially the religious word. For example, in United States, there's the virtue, but virtue, the definition of virtue in English is quality of human being. But in Korean, the definition of virtue means quality and action of human being. So in Korean, we include the action in the definition of virtue. So that, but we use the same word, virtue. So that I just figuring out why we use in different way. In Korean brothers, they make a first draft of the spirit of our foundation, volume 1. So my Korean regional spirits sent email to me about finding errors and then added it for the Korean brothers. And then I did it. So I compared the French one, English one, and Korean one. And then I just figure out, I believe the French one is I believe the French one is first. And then I should compare with English and then Korean, which is different. And then I found that, this, like, for example, in Korean says this letter is from the 1831, but English says 1832 and French says 1832. And then I just back to the letters of Chaminade and then finding, this is 1832. So the Korean one is wrong. So we need to edit. So I just checking, not 8031 to 80. It should be 8032. That's I did in August to November, and then December I back to Novitiate, and then January to now, I just like organizing what I did during in the whole my life in United States.
You talked a little bit about your research when you were here at NACMS and the comparison of the different texts and the cultural differences and language differences. Many people may not realize the level of significance that work has, as well as the dynamics of expertise that go into that. But I've heard a lot about kind of that expertise that you bring, and I'm curious if you see that dynamic potentially continuing for you, that dynamic of study or library services or different things like that in the future you have with the Marianists.
Yes, so I like organizing.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that I want to be a Marianist librarian. I liked organizing the books in the Marianist library. And then I see that that's wonderful. They're wonderful works. So it was very wonderful. So like first I came in here in NACMS, I just very surprised. It is very well organized, which means well organized stuff makes good research. So this is my paradise here. So that's what I say. It's like, I'm just very happy to be here and then study here, and research here, work here. Many things makes me happy. So when I go back to Korea, I'm strongly want to do work about the librarian work things, or the kind of organizing something that I can do.
I'm curious about your perspective on how the experience of discernment in the novitiate is different than discernment that might come before the novitiate.
First of all, in case of this novitiate community, we are international novitiate community. So which means we can see how differences, how cultural differences that we can see. For me, in my case, I'm from South Korea, and then another novice is from Mexico, and from in here in American novice. So I met the two different cultures, and then they see my culture too, and then which means we should understand how different it is. But the another things is we also noticed how many things that I based on my culture. Even it is natural by myself, and then it is not natural for their culture. So that means that for other novices feels that does not make sense. And then from that differences, from that gaps, we don't understand each other. So that makes distance, and then so that makes we have good interaction each other's. So I realized what we need to solve these issues is honesty is important. Showing yourself. Like in case of Korea, we don't hug much. We don't contact much. Just shaking hands is enough. Even greeting or say goodbye. And here in United States or Mexico, they come to me, just hug. They try to hug me a lot. So it's like I try to pushing it, but I realize they really wanna welcoming or hospitality for me. So that's why they wanna hug or shaking. And then since I realized that it's just fine, kind of these things, understanding cultural differences in this spiritual international novitiate, and then that makes my discernment before the novitiate was like when I go back to Korea, I would do the Marianist work just in the Korea and then just around in the Korea, so not go outside of Korea. But in the novitiate community, I realized I should interact with international brothers. So that makes my discernment wider, broader, and deeply that I can get into.
Before we ask our concluding question, I'd like to offer a word of thanks to you, our listeners, for listening to this episode and for your engagement with the North American Center for Marianist Studies. Make sure to subscribe to Sharing Our Marianist Stories wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at This Is NACMS. Now, to wrap up this episode, we return with our final question. We know the founders corresponded through letter writing. So if you were going to write a letter to anyone, dead or alive, who would you write to, and what would be the topic? Because you're guaranteed a response from them.
To Father Shaminat? First of all, I just write letters to explain about nowadays situations. And then I would say, this seems like similar as what you have right after French revolutions. And then you found the Bordeaux sodality first. So like in this situation, in nowadays, I just ask some advice. What spiritual things that I can continue to build the new Christian community or to the re-Christianized community, kind of thing. I will send it the letters to Father Shamina.
Brother Joseph, thank you so much for taking the time to share about your Marianist journey and some of those nuances which you have. And I hope that our paths continue to cross. Thanks.
Thank you.